All right, good evening, everyone. So welcome to our DCAGT live session. We are streaming simultaneously on Facebook and YouTube right now, and we are recording this session. So it's going to be available to view both on the DCAGT website as well as the DCSD website. So I am Becca Coster, and I'm going to be your moderator this evening. Before we get started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about DCAGT. So DCAGT stands for the Douglas County Association for Gifted and Talented, and it's a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're an all-volunteer organization made up of family members, educators, and community members, and we're an affiliate of the Colorado Association for Gifted and Talented. So we provide information, we share resources, as well as our experiences with others of what has worked for our gifted students. So we're here to help you, and whether you're very early in your journey, whether you're wondering if your child is gifted or if you have been on this journey for a while, we often talk to families about how to advocate for their students by building strong, lasting relationships with teachers and gifted education facilitators. So if you find yourself in a situation where you need some advice, you need some resources, or you just need someone to listen, please feel free to reach out to us. So in order to honor your time this evening, it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker. And tonight's speaker is Misty Burkhart. She is the coordinator of advanced academics and gifted education in the Douglas County School District. So Misty's going to be presenting for the first half of our session. And during the second half, we're going to open the session for Q&A. So welcome very much, Misty.
Thank you, Becca. I'm so glad to be here and to be able to talk about the identification in our district. I've done this a number of times, usually in person. So this is a little bit new for me when we're trying everything virtual, but I am excited to be here. So I'm going to, and we have this up, right? Everybody can see?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So I've been the coordinator. This is my 6th year, but I've been in Parker schools a lot longer than that. And I've always had gifted in my background, whether that's being a gifted cluster teacher, a gifted facilitator, a PLS. Anything I've ever done is working with gifted students, because that, since really the beginning of my career, that's been my passion, to make sure that we are not only finding these students, but also making sure that they have the appropriate programming. So I'm very happy to talk to you about what that looks like here in Douglas County. So every time, anything we do, we always think about student first, and we think through the lens of identity, plan, and serve. So tonight we're going to focus on the identity portion of this. So this is, I just wanted to show you the different district level contacts. So Natasha Strayer is our director, and then I've just highlighted my name in case you need that information to get a hold of me. And then we also have Kim Bertha, who helps us with some special education. She's a 504 coordinator, so she does some 2E stuff with us. Michelle Oslick, Jennifer Gottschalk, and Heather Groff are our leads. So they are in schools a lot, helping train facilitators and teachers. So we have a really, really good team. The amount of expertise in our team is pretty amazing. We also have gifted feeder leads. So these people have different full-time jobs somewhere. Most of them are gifted facilitators, but some of them are PLS or teachers or assistant principals. We try to get a good mix, and then from elementary and middle and high school as well. So they have their jobs. And then besides that, they also support all the schools in their feeder. So they do a lot of work with them. They'll go into the school and help with professional development, help answer their questions. They're kind of those unsung heroes that don't get a lot of applause, but they are really working behind the scenes as experts, helping our leads in our feeder area. Okay, so we're going to talk about identification, and we're going to start out with the law. I love this, right? Do not pick up the goat. So this is pretty clear. That's why I put this up here, because our identification process is in law through CDE, and we make sure that we are following CDE law. Not everybody realizes that. We do not have any federal guidelines around gifted, but so we do have state, and it's state by state. So we have pretty good ones. We're one of the top states, I would say, but there are some states that have zero. They have nothing. So we're very lucky that we do have law. So where that is housed is in the Exceptional Children's Education Act. And so that talks about the first 97 pages is all about special education. And then after that, then we start. So we start like at 98. But there's different specific laws around ID, plan, and programming. But a lot of it is in identification. This is just on here as a reference, but you can go to the CDE, the Colorado Department of Education. You can go to their website. You can get a lot of this information on there. So in 2015, some of the rules were revised and were a little bit more robust, helping us with identifying students, and especially our underserved populations, to make sure we're identifying all students that need to be identified. So there's two different areas you can look at. So this one is the Ecea revised rules. This is where it says the 5.BCA. It's very, very specific. At this point, I think I have most of those memorized. And then there's also, they have an identification chapter that is about guidance that follows those rules. So those are available for anybody at any time to be able to go and look through those. So the different areas of identification in the state of Colorado that you can identify a student in K-12 is, so over here on the left-hand side, this is what most people think when they think of being identified as gifted, right? So you have reading, writing, math, science, social studies, and world language. And then our other areas that we have, creative or productive thinking, leadership, visual arts, dance, music, performing arts, and psychomotor. So we have different processes for all of these. I would say with Michelle Oslick, who's one of our leads, with her help, we have done a ton in these areas over here. And she's been one of the leaders in our state who's been developing some of those processes too. So we're very lucky to have that. Portability goes along with those Ecea rules, and that just says if a student is identified in one district in one or more categories, then that is going to be able to go over to, so if you go to another district, let's say you move up north and you go into Adams 12, that identification will go with the student. And as long as it was done the correct way according to the Ecea rules, then it's portable. So that's one of the things that they added, which is really nice and helps with students who maybe are moving and going back between districts. When we're looking at the evidence that we gather, we really want to look at a full body of evidence. So these are just some of the things, some of the main things that we're collecting when we're looking at this. We want to look at the whole child, not just one test on one day. We want to look at everything in different areas. And we even do different surveys and things that might not be typical, that if they come up high on some of the surveys, things like that, that might lead us in different directions. So it's really important that we gather that full body of evidence. I really like this picture here because we tell our facilitators when we're training that when we're gathering all of this data in the identification process, it is not just for ID, right? There's certain things that we have to get for identification, but it's also for programming. So we learn a lot about students going through this process. So whether it ends up being a no or a yes or a talent pool, which we'll talk about in a minute, either way, we know a lot about that, and that data is going to help drive instruction and programming for that student. So we're not one of the people who are just going to build a Lego ship and then set it up on a shelf. We're going to build it and then we're going to fly it. Okay, so when you're looking at the criteria for identification, what the Ecea rules say is that you typically need 3 qualifiers in order to be identified in a strength area. Students can be, a lot of students are just identified in one, maybe two. Some people think if you're gifted in all areas, and that can happen a little bit, but usually it's just one or two. There is an exception to this rule, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. What the state says is that when we are looking at norm reference standardized tests, we're looking at nationally normed tests, scores need to come up in the 95th percentile or higher to be one of those three qualifiers. The other area, because we have a performance area where you gather a portfolio for a student, so that's their in-class work, things like that, that needs to be distinguished or advanced and consistent. And all of those different things that we can look at, we're going to look at different, like math test scores, rubrics for writing, things like that. So we put all of that together to determine in that specific area, is it advanced or distinguished? With the body of evidence, we have qualifying data, and then we have some additional data. So over here on the left-hand side, this is what we can use as qualifiers, which I'm going to go through specifically in a second. Over here, this is the other things that we make sure that we are gathering, those anecdotal records. We give interviews a lot where maybe the facilitator, the teacher pulls the student aside, and we have some really fun questions for them that will really bring out characteristics of gifted students. And that also makes sure that we learn enough about them to figure out what's their hook, what are they interested in, so we can add that to their programming. We can do observation and checklists as well. So all of those things we get together, but these ones over here are the qualifiers that we can use. So how that looks is we have aptitude right here. So the one that we use most is the COGAT, but there's other testing measures. We do accept outside testing for identification, but most often in the district, you'll have the COGAT. For achievement, we have lots of different ones, but we use iReady a lot right now, but there's other ones like CMAS, that type of thing. Then the observation scale here, that's what the teacher fills out. And then the student performance. So down here, we also have the parent rating scale down there in purple. Sorry, it brings that up when I do that. The parent rating scale, the student survey, and student interview. Even though these aren't qualifiers, they are hugely important. As parents, you know your students the best, and you are going to have a lot of insight into what's happening at home versus what is happening at school. So partnership with parents is very important. So to break that down a little bit, so those four areas we're thinking about. So cognitive, so this is what we use in Douglas County is the main one that we use. You might also see a DOS, or a WISC, or a Woodcock-Johnson. Sometimes that happens in other districts, or somebody might have gotten that through a SPED evaluation, but most likely you'll see the COGAT. And for us, we use the COGAT as a universal screen. And what that means is that we want to make sure that we are throwing a wide net and getting as many students as possible, and that we're not missing anybody. So because of that, all students in second grade take the COGAT, which they're going to be coming up in November or February. Second grade is going to be taking the COGAT. And then all either 5th or 6th graders take the COGAT. That depends on which year is the last grade in elementary. So if you're at a school that has 6th grade, you'll take it in 6th grade. If it's 5th grade, you'll take it in 5th grade. So the intent is to make sure that we are finding those exceptionalities in all different student groups. So that universal screen, that helps support that cultural fairness and the unbiased testing. So using the COGAT, it's the best cognitive assessment, group administered assessment out there, which is why we use that. To get that information. We will have kids pop up on this that we hadn't thought of before. Maybe they're really quiet, or maybe there's other things that are getting away, and we're like, oh, look at that, right? We need to look a little bit closer at that student. So that's why we do the universal screens, and we do it twice because a lot can change from second grade to 5th or 6th. Not your cognitive abilities really, but maturity, time on task, things like that. So for those achievement tests, so right now, Douglas County uses iReady. So again, we're looking at scores in the 95th percentile or higher in the specific areas. There's also MAP, STAR, ITBS or the Iowa, and then of course our state assessment CMAS. So we can use all of these different achievement tests to use for qualifiers as well. The one thing I do want to say about that is we really want to make sure that we are not keeping a student from getting the programming they need because of one test on one day. So some people think, oh, the COGAT is the gifted test. It's really not. We use that for all students. It's good for all of them, but we wouldn't keep them out just because that one test on one day. Same with maybe achievement that was taken. So again, we're collecting all of this together so that we can get a really good picture of that potential for that student. Then the other two areas, we talked about the behavior observation scale. So we use the SIGs, which is the scales for identifying gifted students. And when a student is going through the referral process, this goes to the teacher. And if they're at the elementary, it's their regular teacher. And if it's at the middle or high school, it usually goes to the teacher that they suspect the strength area might be in. So maybe math, they'd go to the math teacher to fill it out, that type of thing. It's norm reference and also gives us a percentile. So in the 95th percentile or above. And some people get a little confused with percentage and percentile. If you're thinking about percentile and you're at the 95th percentile, that means you scored better than 94% of students your age throughout the nation on that assessment. So different than I got 95 correct answers, right? That's a percent. And then, of course, we have the parent survey and the student survey, which are not qualifiers, but very, very important to help with programming. And then the other area, which we don't have on there, is the performance area. That's what I talked about earlier with the math tests. It could be reading assessments in the classroom, those types of assessments. It's almost like gathering their best work in class and their portfolio to say, let's look at this. Are they in the high math group all the time and they're still scoring 100% and getting the bonus questions, that type of thing. So we use that again to look at that portfolio to see if they're distinguished or advanced. There are many, many different ways that we can gather this body of evidence, right? So you have the universal screen, which would be the COGAT that we give. When we're going through our response to intervention process, a student can come up. Cognitive tests, so we have students who show up in the 95th percentile or higher, and we start the process for those students, right? All of these here. We also have talent and ability or creative tests. That's what I was talking to you earlier about with Michelle Oslick, who has helped a lot with that and put those processes together. So that's if we're looking at the creative or productive thinking, that type of thing. Anything here, interviews, parent input, anything that we can gather that's going to help us either for identification or programming for that child. So ECEA rules also say that you need to have a gifted identification team at every school. So I love this picture. This is one of my favorite pictures because I can just imagine them going around and, okay, what's the cognitive score for that student? But for them, they're doing that so that it doesn't rely on one person. So then you have multiple experts in a school who are looking at this data and not only saying, do they qualify, but also then saying, well, you know, it seems like they're, you know, really strong in math, but they're struggling right now. Have you tried this or have you tried that? So it's kind of a dual team that they're working on. And those teams are specially trained. We train the leaders and then come in and change the team as well. Once that team meets, there are 5 different determinations that they can give. The first one is yes, the student is identified, has the appropriate qualifiers, and according to the ECEA rules, they qualify as being gifted in a specific area. The second option might be, you know, we need some new tools and we need to get some new data. It's more as, this isn't the best tool for this student to see where they're really at. So we're going to go maybe look at a different achievement test, or maybe I'm going to go give them a DRA, which is a reading test that we can give for students to kind of see about what grade level they're on. So that could be an option, and then come back later to determine. The other option is the talent pool. That's for students who don't qualify, but there's something else there. Maybe they have one qualifier or two qualifiers, but they don't have the third. And we know that there's a lot of potential there, but we're not seeing it as much. So we can put them in talent pool, which I'll show you that in just a minute. The other option could be that it's a no for now, gifted identification, that the student doesn't qualify. They might be advanced, but they might not be gifted according to the Ecea rules. We always make sure that students are put in that talent pool first before that no designation, mostly, to make sure that we're digging and we're really, uncovering every rock with that student. And then the last one could be a yes. And then also a referral for special education assessments. So this could be possibly a student that we suspect might be twice exceptional, which means that they're identified as gifted, and that they are identified in special education is either having an IEP or a 504. So sometimes that comes through that route, and we can see, well, look at all this data, but they really struggle in this area. We suspect they might have a learning disability. So then we go that route. So that's the 5 different things that we can look at. So for talent pool, I like this because we think about, we don't want to leave the kids in there too long. We don't want them getting pruny. It's been a little bit more difficult this year with the pandemic and being online and in there. So some students might be in there a little bit longer than they usually are. But the purpose of talent pool is to provide interventions for them. So they don't quite qualify. So what we do is we change their programming. The teacher does something different with either advanced math, reading, whatever the suspected strength area is, whether that's I moved them up to the top reading group and I'm using Jacob's Ladder, which is materials that are designed for gifted students, and trying that out for 4 to 6 weeks. And then after that 4 to 6 weeks, we take data again to see if we have those qualifiers. So them being in the talent pool really is that they're still getting that appropriate programming, and we're just figuring out different levels to see where they are and where their instructional level is. So when we're thinking about CDE, the Colorado Department of Education, and about those Ecea rules, there are 3 different ways that you can identify a student. So this is the first one. So it's specific academic aptitude. So this pathway says right here, so the cognitive test was the 95th percentile or above on 1 or more batteries. So that could be on verbal, quantitative, or nonverbal. Those are in the 95th percentile or above. You already have 1 qualifier. So now we're looking at 2. We just need 2 more. So then we go down here. This is the achievement box that we are looking at, those norm referenced achievement, the state assessments achievement, appropriate district approved assessments for non-state tested standards. And then here, excuse me, the norm referenced observation scale. This is the SIGs that we give to teachers who, who talk about, are able to mark down what they're seeing in class from the student. And then, of course, the performance evaluation. So here this says state or national academic contest, top place or ranking. This doesn't happen as much, and if it does, it's usually in the middle or high school level, but we do have some in elementary. These are students who have maybe gotten up for, first or second or third going into like a writing contest for the state, things like that. So you can use that as a piece of evidence, or that expert juried performance. And then this is more, the performance is more if you're looking at like dance, psychomotor, things like that. But then this is that portfolio, which is that big one. It's kind of where the car hits the road, right? That's what they're doing. Is it advanced and distinguished or above grade level? And is it consistent? So that's one way. Excuse me, been talking all day. The second way to look at that is sometimes a student might not score in the 95th percentile or above on a cognitive test. So this could be the COGAT, the Naglieri, any of those other assessments. And they might be, maybe they score in the 92nd percentile. So those students are ones that we still want to dig deeper and look for, because we are looking to find those students. That's part of our job, is to go looking for them. So what we do is continue to gather the rest of the body of evidence. And if you're able to find 3 or more measures from the same 3 boxes, and they're consistent over, I keep doing that. And they're consistent over time. It says multiple, so this one up here, multiple data points and trends over time. So if we see that, we can still identify a student that way. That's one of those 1 test on 1 day. Sometimes we have students who have test anxiety, and especially the COGAT, sometimes they get pressure on them to do well on that. And sometimes they don't, or they're nervous, or they didn't get enough sleep, or they weren't feeling well, or whatever it is. We don't want to say, okay, well, sorry, that's it. We're still going to look at everything else, and you can still identify that student. The third way, and this was one of the what was put in July 2015 for the updated rules for Ecea. This is the exception to the rule, so it's not used very much. This is used for students who have gotten a cognitive test like the COGAT, and they score in the 95th percentile or higher, but then when you look in the other areas, you can't find the appropriate data. So if it's just because they're not performing, or maybe, maybe they're just advanced, it could be, but really that's usually things like the student might be twice exceptional, right? So if you have a student who's dyslexic and dysgraphic, their test scores on achievement are not going to be very high, because a lot of those you have to read and do that. Might struggle a little bit more in school and not show as much as they're able to sometimes. So in that case, what we can do is we can use that 95th percentile as their qualifier. And you can use 1 qualifier for this. So they make sure they put it in bold and they underline it. It's the exception to the rule. This is the same looking at students, our ESL students who are learning the language. We get lots of students who come in and they don't really speak very much English, and they're not proficient in English, and then all of a sudden they're in math and they're amazing. They don't even know the language, and they're doing these amazing things. So that's one of the ways that we can identify a student that way. It can also be behavior, right? So if you have a student who has behavior things that are going on, and if they were able to be regulated, or they were able to sit down and really work, they probably would do well. Sometimes that's not always possible. So I'm really glad that they put this in, because this really helps us find those students that really, really need to be identified, so that we can get them on a plan and make sure that they are followed and that they're getting the appropriate programming while getting the other additional supports that they need. The one I put on here that I didn't put on here then was the area for the talent areas. So dance, psychomotor, things like that. That's a little bit different. So we're not looking at academics for them. We're looking at like if it's judo and you have your child has scored in the state and ranked as number 2 in the state, right, for judo, or the nation even. Sometimes we get that. You can use that. We have those different creativity assessments that we can give to students to see. So it's a little bit different, but it's still looking at those qualifiers, and they look at a lot of different things with that, from how long have they been doing it, to what has their exposure been in school to it, that type of thing. So if you're interested in that, that's a little bit different as well, but we can always send you to Michelle Oslick, who can help explain that too. So that right there is the gist of it, collecting that full body of evidence and making sure that we are mining and nurturing for potential. And that's what we're out there trying to do. If you think that your child might be gifted, you will want to you can talk to the teacher always. Sometimes they aren't as familiar with this process. So always double check with the gifted education facilitator. We have one at every school, elementary through through high school, and all of our charters have facilitators as well. Now they have other jobs as well, so there aren't many of them that do just gifted, but they're usually like doing double work on things. But they're very knowledgeable, and you can go talk to them. Also, on your school's website, there should be a gifted education page. And it usually tells you, so if you go to, let's say you go to Legend, if you go on there, look at their gifted education page, it'll say who that facilitator is, and then it will also have the online referral form. That's a great way to start. You can fill that out. It's a consent to test so that we can do some of those other things. And then it also has a parent portion on there. If you are going to take that, give yourself time to sit down. It's pretty extensive. And the more specific examples you can give on that, the better. And then attached to that same form at the end is the student form. So the student then can go in and fill that out. If you have a primary student who can't type, you can go ahead and scribe for them and type for them. We have a little question on there to say, yes, I scribed for my child, you know, first grade, kindergarten, second grade, that type of thing. So that would be the way to go, and to talk to your school's teacher and facilitator about the process, and so that they can go ahead and get that going. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, that was a really quick way when I train my facilitators. We take a whole half a day and then practice in the afternoon and do a lot of different things. But that's kind of it for now. So I think, Becca, are we just going to move on to questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Misty. So as Misty said, we're now open for questions. So drop your questions into the comments below. You're also welcome to email your question to info@dcagt.org. I'm going to read the questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. So while you guys are formulating and
this is my questions. Look at how cute that is, right? He's
yes.
like, hello, I have a question. I love that picture.
Nice. That's amazing. I love it too. I also love the Harvard shirt.
I know, right? It just goes there, and you don't know if he's playing Candy Crush or if he's, you know, on there solving the world's problems. We don't know.
Yeah, it could be. It could be both.
Could be both.
All right. And so while you all are formulating questions for Misty, I am also going to put a survey link in the chat. So when you have time, if you could please take a moment or two to give us some feedback so that we can improve our future sessions. All right. Okay.
I know, I'm so popular. I'm sure there's 500 people waiting to ask me questions.
All right. So it looks like we don't have any questions quite yet. So with that, I think what I'm going to do is in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and put in a link where you can find the gifted education facilitator for each school.
Perfect.
So everyone will be able to locate that. And for those of you who are needing to look at that information later, if you go to DCSDK12.org and you search on the A to Z, you can just go to the gifted education portion of the website, and that will really help. So let me put that in the chat. And then
and you can also contact us, contact our department. So we have our program assistant who answers the calls, all that type of thing. So her name is Christina Levesque. Here is her number, and then here is her email as well. And then if it's something that we need to address, she'll send you on to us. And then this is my email down here too. So you can feel free to contact me with questions, and we'll make sure we get you to the right people.
right, wonderful. Okay, so we do have a question, and it is from Sherry. So how is leadership identified, and what opportunities are there for elementary to grow leadership?
So some of those additional areas are harder to identify in elementary, and that more is just because of the experience and what's available, right? As soon as you get to middle and high school, they have all types of clubs. They have different, you can be in plays, you can, different sports, which you can do anytime outside of that. So it doesn't happen as much as when it's younger. Some schools do have like a student council that they do in elementary school. So that really depends on the school. Sometimes it's more of looking at, and this is where some of the surveys come into play. So having the teacher fill out, oftentimes these students are the ones that other students go to, and not necessarily because they're the smartest, but because they're the leaders in the room. Or if something's happening and they say, hey guys, just, calm down, everybody kind of listens to them. They have that natural knack. Or students that are, I've seen students that we've identified and they're going into their principal to say, hey, I think we should do this, right? I think we should raise money for this organization, or I think we should do an assembly where we can put everybody in together and talk about whatever, is their passion and they think they should do. So not as many opportunities at the elementary school that is just laid out, right? So many more at the secondary. But those types of things is what we're looking for. And the teacher's saying, oh yes, that student, kids come to him all the time, or she's the one who's up there and they listen when she speaks. So it's that type of thing. And then sometimes it's really clear, but oftentimes then they're almost put in that talent pool so that we can know then and say, okay, so what other opportunities can we provide in that school in those different areas? And then trying to offer that more for what's available before they get to middle school.
All right. Thank you, Misty. We have a comment. Okay. So Jen says she doesn't have a question, but she adores us both. So thank you so much, Jen. It's nice to see you. I mean, not you, but you see me. All right. So while you all are formulating questions, I do want to let you know that on Monday, February the 8th, we're going to have our next DCAGT Live, and it's going to focus on early access to kindergarten and first grade. And we're going to share information about early access as well as information about giftedness in those early years.
And so that'll be with Heather, right?
I believe so, yes.
So with Heather Groff, and that is one of our other leads that is on here a lot. And she very, very passionate about those little ones. So the whole early access process for her, being able to work with those little preschoolers coming in and really walking the parents through that process is the time that she takes to do that, and the personal time she gives is pretty amazing. And then also just looking at how we can make sure that we're identifying students earlier so that we can provide that intervention. And she's fabulous at that. You'll know when you watch it because it'll just pour out of her.
That's so wonderful. All right, I'm gonna hop over and see if there are questions in the email box, because I do know that not everyone is comfortable writing their questions in such a public forum. So
being recorded, they're like,
if you are one of those people, because I would be one of those people, you can email us at info@dcagt.org, and I will get your question and be able to read it.
And Becca always talks about how shy she can be and not wanting to speak in front of people. And then she's like the master facilitator on these Facebook Lives. I mean, we would not have these if it wasn't for Becca. She worked so hard on this, and you can never leave. Even after your kids graduate, you have to stay. So we're just letting you know that right now.
Okay. Well, I fully accept, and I am very, very shy, and this was very, very scary for me, and I'm improving.
Look, you're doing awesome. Look at you. I'm so impressed.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate all of your time and information and expertise, because I know that when I was first starting out to learn about giftedness, to figure out how to help and advocate for my student, that seeking that information and gaining that and building those relationships with the teachers and the facilitator and working together has really, really helped us as a family tremendously.
Oh, good. We really hope we can do that with the systems we've set up for support and reaching out to the community and parents with you've helped with. But it is really important. And if you're talk to the teacher and they don't really know, go talk to the facilitator, because they definitely do. And we are doing trainings with them all the time. We just had a fabulous training yesterday with them that they're very excited about doing some implementing of some new programming. So yeah, just reach out. And if you're not sure, you're like, I don't know if they're gifted. They might be, I don't know. They're my first child or they're my only child, so I don't have anything to compare it to. Just ask. We'll go through it with you. We'll look and dig in and see what we can find.
Oh, well, that's so wonderful. And I think that is really so valuable, because that was a place that I was in. I was in gifted programming in elementary school, but that was a long time ago. And so I had to sort of relearn all the things that had been put in place since I was in elementary school, and sort of learn how to navigate what it is that I needed to do as a parent, and how to interface with the teacher, and how to figure out who to contact at the school, and how to build those relationships. And so that's so wonderful. And if any of you are out there and you're not sure where to go or where to start, or if you want to talk to a fellow parent, please feel free to reach out to us at DCAGT, because we have been there.
Yes, you have.
I started out with very little knowledge. And through the years, I've gained a lot of information, both from fellow parents, as well as partnering with the district, with Misty and with Heather and Natasha and Michelle. And so I really think it's very, very valuable to be able to reach out to other families who are in the same boat.
Yes. Very important. We always say, find your people.
That's right.
Be your people, so reach out.
Definitely. Okay. Well, it looks like there are no more questions.
Okay. And they might contact you. They could contact me or my department. We're always happy to talk.
Yep, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Misty. I so appreciate it. And again, everyone, we are going to have our next live on Monday, February the 8th. We're going to talk about early access to kindergarten and first grade and giftedness in the early years. So we hope to see you then. In the meantime, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. You can reach DCAGT at info@dcagt.org. And thanks so much for being here. We hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Guys, thank you.
Bye-bye.